They thought they could lecture the American taxpayer without a fight. Congressman Brandon Gill just delivered an absolute masterclass in dismantling the left's budget narrative.
Let's talk about big, beautiful bill. I think this is a big, ugly bill. Let's call it what it is. It is the largest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in U.S. history. This reconciliation package proposes devastating cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. My Republican colleagues will tell you that they are just going after waste, fraud, and abuse, but let's be clear. The only way to slash this much safety net spending is by making it harder for people to survive. Their changes will kick millions of Americans off their health care and nutrition assistance. That means more untreated illnesses, more hungry children, more preventable deaths. This isn't just line items in the budget. There are people's lives, the sacrifice of human dignity and of life itself. And for what? So that your billionaire friends can get nearly $300,000 in tax cuts? This is not a serious budget. This is a green light for authoritarianism, for inequality to run rampant. It is a police state budget wrapped in billionaire tax cuts.
Every dollar the federal government spends was earned by someone who got up and went to work. And for years, without a single headline, that money has been flowing out the door. Transgender operas in Colombia, drag shows in Ecuador, queer feminist discourse in Albania. Your money gone. Meanwhile, Ilhan Omar stood in Congress, calling the reconciliation bill the largest wealth transfer from the poor to the rich in American history. The same party defending $50,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia is lecturing us about protecting the poor. Brandon Gill from Texas sat through that entire speech. Then he got 6 minutes. And what he did with those 6 minutes is exactly why Ilhan Omar and the entire Democrats are terrified of this new generation of Republicans.
Mr. Gill from Texas is recognized for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, thank you for all of your hard work. I'm thrilled about this piece of legislation as it's getting started. This reconciliation bill, I believe, will balance. It will extend the Trump tax cuts for the working class so that they don't experience the biggest tax increase in American history, and it'll grow the economy. But of course, it will also help us to implement the Trump agenda, which is to clean up the chaos and destruction that Joe Biden unleashed on our country over the past 4 years. It will help us fund the mass deportation of illegal aliens who have been murdering and raping and pillaging American citizens. It will help us unleash our fossil fuel energy sector, and it will allow us to rebuild our military. And of course, it will help us implement DOGE, which this amendment targets, among other things. As DOGE has been rolled out, I think it's been a bit curious because I found that so many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have not been upset about the waste, fraud, and abuse that this process has uncovered. Rather, they've been angry that the fraud has been exposed at all. We found that for decades, the administrative state has been weaponized against the American people. We can give example after example of flagrant abuses of American taxpayer dollars. We've heard of some of them earlier, but I'll name a few more. $1 million spent to boost French-speaking LGBTQ groups in West and Central Africa through the State Department. Almost $50,000 on a transgender opera in Colombia, also through the State Department. Over $7,000 for a BIPOC speaker series in Canada through the State Department. I think it's worth noting that normal, sane Americans don't know what BIPOC means, and neither do I. $80,000 for an LGBTQ community center in Slovakia, and over $16,000 for a united and equal queer feminist discourse in Albanian society, whatever that is. And of course, we also know that our taxpayer dollars have been going to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars every year to fund left-wing media outlets like NPR and PBS, paying for welfare for illegal aliens, and paying for giving out payments to international organizations that are censoring and pushing for the censorship of American citizens. Our own federal government is using taxpayer dollars to promote ideologies that tens of millions of Americans find utterly repulsive. I think if the other side of the aisle has such a deep ideological opposition to this DOGE process, I challenge them to be straightforward with the American people and explain why taxpayer dollars should be funding queer feminist discourse in Albanian society or drag shows in Ecuador. I don't think that they will, but I would love to see it if they did. Elon Musk acting as an employee and an agent of the president, I think has certainly more democratic legitimacy than Anthony Fauci did, and he certainly has more democratic legitimacy than the nameless, faceless bureaucrats who have been running our lives for several years, the waste of which he is rooting out currently. President Trump here with DOGE is doing exactly what he was elected to do. DOGE is a part of the Trump mandate. It's extremely popular. In fact, Elon Musk and the DOGE movement right now are polling at a higher approval rating than Joe Biden had on his way out of the White House. President Trump, of course, is polling at record numbers.
Let's break down what just happened. Ilhan Omar took to the floor, painting a grim picture of preventable deaths and hungry children to attack the Republican reconciliation package. She claimed the GOP was slashing the social safety net just to fund tax cuts for the wealthy, calling it a green light for authoritarianism. But as we've seen time and time again, it's the classic political pearl-clutching routine. She wanted everyone to think Republicans were attacking vulnerable Americans, completely ignoring the fact that the country is drowning under a massive national debt. When Brandon Gill took the floor, he didn't deal in vague talking points. He brought the receipts. He exposed the absurdities that hard-earned taxpayer dollars have been funding abroad for years. $50,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $80,000 for an LGBTQ community center in Slovakia, and over $16,000 for queer feminist discourse in Albanian society. Gill hit the nail on the head. It is impossible to keep a straight face while lecturing the American public about protecting the poor while shipping thousands of dollars overseas for bizarre ideological projects. The real tension in the room centered around DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. Gill pointed out that the left isn't actually upset about waste being uncovered. They're furious that the fraud has been exposed at all. He defended Elon Musk's democratic legitimacy compared to the nameless, faceless bureaucrats who have controlled federal agencies from the shadows for decades. Then Gill issued a direct, unanswerable challenge to the other side of the aisle. Step up and explain to the American people why their tax dollars should fund drag shows in Ecuador or overseas leftist discourse. Unsurprisingly, they had no answer. If you're tired of seeing your tax dollars funneled into radical international projects while our national debt spirals, smash that